The Kidnapper's Curse. The night in the small Indian city was unusually silent. The streetlights flickered, and a cool wind whispered through the narrow lanes. Every parent in town had locked their doors early that evening, their hearts heavy with fear. A kidnapper was on the loose, taking children and leaving behind nothing but eerie silence and empty beds. Inside a modest tea shop on the corner, Guptaji and Mishraji sat quietly, both staring into the steam rising from their cups. Their city had changed, once full of laughter and running children, now echoing with whispers of horror. "We can't sit like this, Mishra," Guptaji said, voice tense. "We must find this kidnapper before he takes another child." Mishraji nodded hesitantly. "But he's not just a man, they say he has powers. Magic. That he turns people into dolls." The words hung in the air like fog. Still, both men stood, determined to do what others feared to try. The hunt begins. They started walking through the silent city streets, their flashlights cutting through the mist. The wind carried faint, haunting echoes, a soft lullaby, like someone singing to a sleeping child. "Do you hear that?" Guptaji whispered. "Yes, that's coming from the old warehouse near the railway line." They followed the sound cautiously. The warehouse stood half in ruins, its windows shattered and covered in cobwebs. The singing stopped the moment they stepped inside. Inside, strange symbols were painted on the walls, circles, numbers, and red lines. Old toys were scattered across the floor, their eyes broken, their faces cracked. Suddenly, a faint laugh echoed through the dark. A man stepped out from behind a pillar, his eyes reflecting the flashlight beam like a predator's. He wore a long black coat and carried a small glass bottle that shimmered in the light. "So," he said with a chilling smile, "you've come looking for the kidnapper. The magical trap." Guptaji clenched his fists. "We know who you are. Let the children go." The man's grin widened. "You don't understand. I am letting them go into eternal silence." Before they could react, he uncorked the bottle and flung a few drops of liquid into the air. Instantly, a blue mist spread across the room. Guptaji staggered backward, coughing as his hands began to stiffen. "Mishra, run," he shouted. Mishraji watched in terror as Guptaji's skin hardened like clay. His body froze mid-step, his eyes wide open, glassy, unblinking. In seconds, he was no longer human. He was a lifelike statue, his face locked in horror. "Guptaji!" Mishra screamed, tears flooding his eyes. The kidnapper's laughter filled the warehouse. "Now he'll stay with me forever, just another toy for my collection." Panicking, Mishraji ran for the exit as the kidnapper hurled another splash of the strange liquid his way. A few drops grazed his sleeve, leaving a burning sensation on his skin. He burst out of the warehouse and into the night, gasping for air. His heart pounded as he ran down the dark alleyways until, in the distance, he saw flashing blue lights. The police encounter. A police van was parked near the intersection. Mishraji sprinted toward it, waving his arms. "Help, please. There's a man, a monster, in there. He's turning people into dolls." A police officer stepped out, flashlight in hand, frowning in confusion. "Calm down, sir. What are you saying?" "He has magic. My friend, he's still inside." Before the officer could respond, a chill swept through the street. The mist rolled in again, thicker than before. The sound of slow footsteps echoed from the shadows. The kidnapper emerged from the darkness, bottle in hand, eyes glowing faintly blue. The officer drew his gun, but the kidnapper raised his hand calmly. "Guns won't help you," he whispered. "This city belongs to me now." A faint song began playing from nowhere, a haunting lullaby carried by the wind. "Ratku and Hirmain Bakshay wrote high." The officer froze. His flashlight flickered, and in that strange blue light, the kidnapper smiled wider, whispering something in an ancient tongue. Mishraji turned and ran again, his heart thundering. He didn't look back, but he could hear the soft click of the kidnapper's footsteps following him, steady, patient, and human. The whisper in the mist. Far away, in a small temple at the edge of the city, Baba, The old mystic suddenly opened his eyes mid-meditation. His vision blurred, but he could see flashes: Guptaji's frozen face, the kidnapper's glowing bottle, and an old mansion filled with motionless figures. "This evil has returned," Baba murmured. "The kidnapper walks again, and he will not stop until every innocent soul becomes his puppet." He reached for his beads and closed his eyes once more. Somewhere in the city, the wind whispered, "Bakche man kasakche," and the night grew darker than ever before. The puppeteer's ritual. The night after Mishraji's narrow escape, a storm rolled over the city. Thunder rumbled through the streets as rain poured against the rooftops like endless whispers. Somewhere in the outskirts, in a forgotten mansion swallowed by the forest, the kidnapper's work continued. Inside that decaying house, walls were blackened by age and candle smoke. Torn curtains swayed with each gust of wind, revealing rows of lifeless dolls, some small, some child-sized, all staring into the darkness with glassy, human-like eyes. At the center of the room stood the kidnapper, holding a bowl filled with shimmering blue liquid, the same substance he had used on Guptaji. His lips moved in a strange chant, the air vibrating with unnatural energy. Rakhi Shakti, Bachchan ka sapmir bain Anka Hansa, Ankarona sab mera hoje. The words echoed, unnatural and haunting, bouncing off every wall. Then he raised his hands, and the dolls began to tremble. Dust lifted from their bodies. Slowly, their glass eyes flickered, one by one, as though waking from a long nightmare. "Yes," he whispered. "Wake up, my children. The world forgot me, but you will remember." Baba's vision. Miles away, Baba sat cross-legged on a mat, eyes closed in deep meditation. The scent of incense filled his small temple. He had seen enough darkness in his life to know this was not ordinary evil. His breath slowed, and a faint blue light began to glow between his palms. Within his trance, he saw glimpses of truth: Guptaji and Mishraji standing frozen, the kidnapper surrounded by glowing dolls, and a mansion pulsating with blue fire. "He's performing the Vashikaran Tantra," Baba murmured. "A ritual that binds souls, turning the innocent into his servants." He opened his eyes. The candles in the room flickered violently. If he completes the ritual, the city's children will no longer be free souls. They'll become puppets of his revenge. Without hesitation, Baba stood and began preparing. He gathered a small wooden box containing sacred ash, a copper bowl filled with holy water, and an ancient talisman inscribed with Sanskrit prayers. Then, wrapping his shawl tight around his shoulders, he stepped into the rain. The battle between light and darkness had begun. Mishraji's return. Elsewhere, Mishraji sat shivering in the police station. He had tried explaining everything: the blue liquid, Guptaji turning into a statue, the kidnapper's glowing eyes, but no one believed him. "Sir," the inspector said, rubbing his temples, "you're telling me a man used magic water to turn your friend into a doll? Look, I think you need rest." "No," Mishraji shouted. "You don't understand. He's not human. He's something else." The inspector sighed. "All right, we'll check that warehouse again. But I promise you, there's no such thing as black magic." But when the officers returned to the warehouse that night, they found nothing. The walls were clean. The strange symbols were gone. Even the smell of decay had vanished. Mishraji's heart sank. It was as if the place had wiped itself clean, as if the kidnapper knew they were coming. That night, as Mishraji tried to sleep, he heard something faint at his window, a soft humming, like a lullaby. He froze. It was the same tune the kidnapper had been singing. Slowly, he turned his head toward the window. And there, standing in the rain outside, was a small figure, the doll of a little boy, soaked in water, its face cracked and smiling. The kidnappers passed. Back in the mansion, the kidnapper stood before the now-moving dolls. His voice lowered, almost sad. "They called me Ethan," he whispered. "The cursed one. The boy who brings death." He closed his eyes, remembering. Years ago, when Ethan was a child, his mother had died during childbirth, and his father shortly after from an illness. Every family that took him in seemed to face tragedy. Fires, accidents, deaths. Soon, the town began to whisper that Ithan was cursed. "Stay away from him," the villagers said. "He carries misfortune." The other children avoided him, mocking him from afar. Alone and unwanted, Ithan began wandering the forests, where he met a wandering occultist, an old man who saw something dark in his soul. The man taught him forbidden rituals, promising him power over those who had abandoned him. "You were born cursed," the old man said, "but curses can be turned into strength. Take their laughter and make it your weapon." That was the night Ithan learned his first spell, the one that could turn life into stillness. "Now," he whispered to his dolls, "the children who laughed at me will finally understand what silence feels like." He raised his hands once again. The dolls lifted off the ground, floating like ghosts in the candlelight. "You are my army now, my perfect children." Baba arrives. Lightning cracked outside the mansion as Baba reached the gates. The moment he stepped onto the grounds, a chill ran through his body. The trees leaned unnaturally, their branches creaking as if alive. He could feel it, the air vibrating with dark energy. "You cannot hide, Ithan," Baba said softly. "I know what pain made you this way, but you will not hurt another soul." He sprinkled holy water on the ground, and the soil hissed. The mansion's lights flickered, reacting to his presence. Inside, Ithan turned sharply, sensing the disturbance. "He's here," he muttered. The old man finally came. He smiled, lifting Guptaji's lifeless statue with one hand. "Let him come. Tonight, he will see that my sorrow is stronger than his prayers." Outside, thunder cracked once more as Baba raised his staff and whispered a mantra under his breath. The mansion doors creaked open on their own, and the storm swallowed the city whole. The final night, the storm was at its peak. Lightning split the sky like a jagged scar, and thunder shook the old mansion as if the heavens themselves were warning what was about to unfold. Inside, the flickering candles glowed an unnatural blue, casting dancing shadows on the cracked walls. The air was cold, not the kind that chills the skin, but the kind that seeps into your bones. At the heart of the mansion, Ithan, the kidnapper, stood surrounded by the motionless figures of children, his cursed dolls, their eyes reflecting the same ghostly blue light that shimmered from his bottle of enchanted water. His voice was calm but full of hate, echoing through the vast, empty halls. "You came, Baba. I knew you couldn't resist," he said, smiling faintly. "You've come to save them, but you'll only join them." From the doorway, Baba appeared, drenched, his white robe clinging to him, the sacred ash across his forehead glowing faintly under the candlelight. In one hand, he held a wooden staff carved with holy symbols. In the other, a copper bowl filled with consecrated water that shimmered like liquid silver. "Ithan," Baba said firmly, his voice deep and steady, "you have walked too far into darkness. Let these souls go." Ithan laughed softly. "These souls are mine. They laughed at me when I had no one. They mocked my pain. You think your prayers can erase what they did to me?" Baba stepped closer, his reflection visible in the pool of water on the floor. "They were children, Ithan. Innocent souls. Your revenge has trapped you more than it freed you." Ithan's expression hardened. "Don't talk to me about innocence, old man. Where was your God when I cried alone in the forest? When every home I entered became my curse?" The candles flared violently, the dolls' heads turning slowly toward Baba as though alive. Their eyes glowed brighter, and a chilling hum filled the air, the sound of countless trapped voices whispering together. "They're not yours," Baba said, raising his staff. "You have enslaved them with sorrow. Tonight, I release them." The battle of light and darkness. Ithan raised the bottle high. The blue liquid inside began to swirl violently, glowing brighter until it illuminated the entire hall. With a swift motion, he hurled it toward Baba, and as it shattered, a storm of shimmering blue mist filled the air. The mist took shape, ghostly forms of children reaching out, their faces twisted in confusion and pain. They circled Baba, their tiny hands pulling at his robe, whispering Ethan's name. "He's ours now," Ethan hissed. But Baba remained calm. Closing his eyes, he began chanting ancient Sanskrit verses, his voice deep and rhythmic. His staff glowed gold, and a pulse of light spread outward from his feet, pushing back the mist. The children's cries softened. Their forms began to flicker between the cursed blue and a warm golden hue. Ethan screamed in anger. "Stop! You're ruining everything." He stretched out his arms, summoning his dolls to life. Guptaji's statue and Mishraji's frozen figure twitched, their heads turning in unnatural motions. They began walking toward Baba, their movements stiff and puppet-like. Baba looked at them, sorrow in his eyes. "Forgive me," he whispered, then tapped his staff twice on the ground. A wave of white light burst forth. The dolls stopped. Cracks appeared across their stone-like bodies. One by one, they shattered into dust, freeing the faint outlines of their souls, which drifted upward like tiny sparks of light. Ethan staggered backward, horrified. "No. They were all I had." Ethan's truth. Baba approached him slowly. "You were not born cursed, Ethan. You were born broken by the cruelty of men. You chose vengeance over healing." For the first time, Ethan's eyes showed pain instead of anger. His voice trembled. "They called me a monster. I just wanted to be loved." Lightning flashed through the cracked window, illuminating his tear-streaked face. "You became the monster they feared," Baba said softly. "But it's not too late. You can still let go." Ethan fell to his knees. The energy in the room began to shift. The blue light dimmed, replaced by a soft, trembling glow. The dolls stopped moving. The whispers faded into silence. For a brief moment, Ethan's face softened, his lips trembling as if he were about to speak. Then the ground beneath him cracked open, releasing a rush of cold wind that extinguished every candle in the mansion. "It's too late for me," he said, "but maybe not for them." He looked up at Baba one last time. "End it." Baba raised his staff and chanted one final mantra. Golden light filled the hall, surrounding Ethan completely. His body began to fade, dissolving into 1,000 blue fragments that shimmered like dust in the air. And then, silence. The dawn after the storm. When the storm ended, the first light of morning crept through the broken windows. Baba stood alone in the ruins of the mansion, surrounded by shattered dolls and empty shells. The curse was gone. From outside came the faint sound of laughter, real, living laughter. The children who had been taken were safe now, their souls reborn somewhere in the city. Baba smiled faintly and whispered, "Even the darkest curse can be undone by truth." He turned to leave, but as he reached the door, something glimmered in the puddle near his feet, a small toy, carved crudely in the shape of a boy. It smiled up at him. He picked it up gently. "May your soul find peace, Ethan." As Baba walked out into the rising sun, the mansion behind him crumbled, leaving behind only the echo of a lullaby, faint, fading, but peaceful at last. Ratko and Hirmained Bakche wrote Nahi. And with that, the city finally woke from its nightmare.